And the green light through to the control tower. The Lewis set of motion that about to jump. Set ready. And racing, best out would have been Rambo, straight to the lead, followed out there by Gotcha Pixie, going up on the outside, Magnitude 8 and getting up on the front.
Trevor Wilkes, what was the date of your first commentary at QE2 Park for the Christchurch Greyhound Racing Club, and what do you remember of that day?
Yeah, the date, Rosso, was the 9th of January 1979. That was the official date.
Yep.
I actually called a race at the end of 78. I actually called up at the track and there's no commentator, so Stuart Taylor, who was the club president then, approached me and asked me if I'd like to grab the mic, which I did, and then I got the official job in January the following year. So it's been a hell of a ride, 43 and a half years or whatever it is.
Yeah, and like, do you have a memory for things like, you know, who won the first race on that day and things like that?
Yeah, I do. You always remember your first race winner, or the first one you called, Lively Jim, trained by Kath and Trevor Jolly.
Oh, yeah.
Drew box 8. It's a sprint race, that's about all I can remember. I couldn't tell you who was second and third, but no, Lively Jim. I think it ended up being a pretty good dog too.
So in terms of you getting the position, it was really about you being in the right place at the right time that particular first day, and then club obviously were happy with what you did and wanted to offer you the job.
Exactly, and you know, it was just a lucky break really. I mean, you know, it's hard to break through these days, as you know, but yeah, no, I was just there at the right place at the right time, I guess.
Race 8 on the card at Hutt Park was the Big Stayers race, the Pedigree Pell Meaty Bites Greyhound Formula Challenge Cup.
So what were you doing at that point of your life? Had you had any sort of trial experience?
Yeah, I'd been doing trials at Addington. Gordon Matheson was actually the trial caller at Addington at that stage, and you know, he got me to do a few race calls, and this is where Stu Taylor he must have heard me, because when he approached me, he said, "Aren't you the guy that does the Addington trials sometimes?" And yeah, I was actually quite surprised. But yeah, but so I started with Addington trials, and I've been to Australia just before I came back in that December. I've been to Australia for a few months, but and I just happened to go to the Dogs. It was an on-course only meeting, of course, then. And yeah, so that's really where it all started.
Yeah. So you had a background in harness, because those Addington trials you're talking about are harness. So as a child, did you have a love of sort of all racing codes, or was it particularly harness?
I did really. As far back as the school days, Rosso, you know, I loved the gallops, I loved the harness. And the dogs sort of came later, but once I went to the dogs, I just fell in love with them. And there was a fella up the road from me, he had greyhounds, and I got to talk to him one day, and then I started helping him walking his dogs, and I used to go to the country tracks in New South Wales. This is when I was living on Australia.
Yep.
I did my last 3 or 4 years of schooling in Australia, and yeah, I knew I wasn't that great at school. There was only a couple of subjects I liked really, so the quicker I could get out of school the better. And you know, I used to go around the country tracks. I used to go to places like Orange, Gosford, Dapto, Wollongong, not racing now, but there was a track down the south coast of New South Wales. So yeah, we used to go to a lot of tracks back in those days.
So what attracted you to the sport of racing? Was it something in the family?
No, it wasn't really. There's no background really in our family in racing. I guess it was, you know, some of the schoolmates used to go to Rose Hill. I used to go to school in Parramatta, which is not far from Rose Hill, and one of the guys suggested to come to Rose Hill one day, so I did, and it was brilliant, you know. And I just sort of got attracted then, and that's what made me start going to the races. And even at the school, at the age of 15 or 14, when I was at school, I used to bet with the bookies. The bookies used to accept my bet. I don't know whether I looked older in those days, but of course we had a paper round, and you know, like you do when you're young. And I used to take my paper round money to the races, and you know, just have a bit of a splash. It was great days, you know. It really was.
Were you good? Were you a successful punter?
Not really, no, not really. But I just used to love going and, you know, having the dollar each way on, you know, certain horses that I thought looked good. And in the end, I used to just back the jockeys. Kevin Langby was probably one of my favourites. He rode for TJ Smith back in those days, and he was the #1 rider.
Right. Now, in terms of influences, were there particular commentators that you listened to, that you wanted to be like, or that sort of influenced your style?
Well, I think Rion Murtha, being the Canterbury, the guy, and he had such a great voice, didn't he, Rion? And then there was likes of Reg Clapp and Peter Kelly. They were fantastic commentators. We got good commentators today, but it was a different era back then, and they're the ones that you're brought up with. And I thought if I could get close to Rion, I'd be going okay. But he was something extra, wasn't he?
Yeah, and at one stage you covered for Rion because he went away to an Olympics, and I think you had a few weeks where you were doing Rion's job effectively.
Yeah, that's right. I got the big break back in '88, I think it was, when he went to the Seoul Olympics, and he was away for about 5 or 6 weeks. So yeah, I got a good break then, and I was covering the harness for him, and with the dogs as well. It was, it was quite busy, really.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about QE2 Park, because that's where you got your big break and your
Yep.
full-time role, if you like, there with the Christchurch Greyhound Racing Club. But of course, it was a lot different then. You're racing once a week, and it was on course only to start with. But what memories do you have of QE2 Park itself?
Oh, QE2 Park, it was, had its good points and its bad points, really. I mean to say, as a viewing track, it was a brilliant track, really. The crowd could get right up to the rail. There was no better place to watch races, but but the track itself was grass. There used to be, watering problems and all that sort of stuff, and that's probably why the club decided to get out of there. And I think their move to Addington was probably a good move at the end of the day.
Box 1 was really important at QE2, wasn't it? It was just vital.
Oh, it was. The favourites drew Box 1. I remember one day I picked 9 of the 10 winners. The only one I didn't pick, it got into trouble at the first corner, but I think about 7 of those winners were $1.50 or less. So I mean, it was a bit like a Jules Day, all the favourites won, and it's just a bit of a shame I didn't pick the program. But there was only one that I didn't pick. But as I said, I think anyone could have picked them, Rosso. There was 7 red hot favourites, and I think the other 2 might have started favourite as well.
You talk about the crowd being close, and I remember, they were lining the fence and hanging over the fence. So what was it like commentating there? Because the commentary box is right up the back of the stand there.
Yeah, I used to just call with a naked eye back then too. I had good eyesight back then, but I tell you what, there was one race I always remember. L.B. Boylan had a dog called Princess Elma. She was a noted wide runner, and she was in the race, and I spotted her into the back straight. She was up outside the leaders. She was a little wide, but not that wide until coming around the corner, and she darted out very wide. She was just about touching the outside fence, and coming down the straight, I'd lost her. I thought she had fallen. I was looking for her, but I couldn't find her, and in the end, I just called the dogs that I saw, and then the judge said, hang on a minute. He said, didn't the 8 win? And when the photo comes through, the 8 won quite clearly. What had happened with the crowd on the outside rail, I just missed her altogether. So that's one race. That was in the early 80s. That's one race I'll never forget.
Speaking of the photo, there was a photo finish room pretty much next door to the commentary box. So things were so different then. So you had to wait in a tight finish for the print to be developed.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't got the technology we had now. Back then, photo finishes used to take 6, 7, 8 minutes sometimes if they were close. It's just amazing how technology's gone ahead since then. But no, you're right. Gee, I remember some of those photo finishes. You could go and make a cup of tea and come back, and the print still wasn't developed. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Now, you've talked about Princess Alma and missing her, but let's talk about some of the great dogs and great races you recall at QE2. So when I say QE2 Park to you, what sort of dogs or races come to your mind?
Oh, look, there's been outstanding dogs, really, Rosso. Lisa Havoc was brilliant when I first started. She was sort of late 70s. Miss Deanna, I mean, who could ever forget her?
Wendy's last a length, the Camden Kiwi. Getting back, Carry On Keto, also Wellbeck Road Centre, Madonna Hobbs, and one-tailed off Blue Strober down the straight. And little Miss Deanna, she said goodbye. She's away by 8-9 lengths. She's treating them. Miss Deanna wins it. Carry On Keto has got through for second.
She was the first $100,000 performer in the country. So, to win that money back then was just outstanding. Micro Spot was a favourite of mine, and I remember Max Matthews bought a couple of bitches down from the North Island, Cutie's sister and Miss Cutie, I think it was, yeah. And they were two outstanding bitches. And of course, when we got to Addington, of course, the list just grew. But back in the QE2 days, they were the dogs I really remember. Supreme Domino was outstanding. Mike Lelliott, remember Mike Lelliott? Yes, he was, I think Supreme Domino won about 10 in a row. Magic Command was outstanding. He was a good dog. And Gallant Man, I always remember Gallant Man. I thought he had a lot of ability as well. But look, I've probably missed a few too, Rosso, but they're just some of the ones that really stand out.
Well, you mentioned a couple of Mike and Wendy Lelliott runners there, Supreme Domino and Gallant Man, and Shorty Bijou was another amazing dog for them, sort of at the end of the QE2, and then he actually had a race here. I think he won when he was about 6 on this track.
That's right, and some of his wins were outstanding. I mean, he won the New Zealand Cup. I remember he was wide out all the way, just picked them up and dropped them. But look, when the track got wet, he was just unbeatable because he used to get to the outside, and of course the better going, and he'd just pick them up, and he was just so strong, Shorty Bijou. He was a good dog.
The back and screaming in front, March Legacy yet to win a race here. Could it be tonight? Followed back there by Bavandi Cap. Out wide of the track we go to Shorty Bijou. Into the race comes Aquafloss. Here comes Deadly Raid. Miss Alitash is gone. On its inside, Manzana Havoc and tailed off. Yep. On the corner, right round the outside. Big Shorty kicks for home, and here's Deadly Raid. They go to it. Shorty Bijou, Deadly Raid. Then we go to Aquafloss. Further back. I
remember some nights at QE2, Trevor, when we finished that late, that the outside of the track almost started to freeze up. You could sort of see the frost on the grass.
I remember those days too. Yeah, that's right.
Well, over the last 20 years or so, Trevor Wilkes has done the commentating here at QE2 Park, and he's only got 2 races left to call at this venue. Trevor joins us trackside now, and do you think there'll be much of a difference for you calling at the likes of Addington, which is going to be a rather different track, a sand loam track for starters and of smaller dimensions, as opposed to calling to here?
Well, Mark, I've called at Forbury before, and the surfaces don't really make any difference. What will make a difference, of course, is the better lighting, and it's very difficult on race nights here at QE2. It's the lighting is really not adequate, and Addington, I'm really looking forward to it. Set, and the green light has gone through to the control tower. The bunny set in motion. They're about to break in race 1. Set. And racing, jumping out from the boxes. What
do you remember about the move to Addington here in 1997? Is that quite vivid for you?
Yeah, quite vivid. I remember coming down a few days in the car and just sitting there and watching them prepare. It was just so exciting to get to Addington. After all those years at QE2. QE2 were good, but Addington was just so much better, even though it was inside the trotting track. It was still much better facilities, and the racing was great at Addington, and I think most of us couldn't wait to get there.
In terms of the dogs here, what are the you talked about the QE2 ones. What about the greyhounds that sort of wowed you here?
Well, again, I'm looking at some good bitches. Winsome Ashley was probably. She was probably one of the best I've seen. She was certainly the quickest. Winsome Ashley, and then you had dogs like Opawa Shackley. Cecilia Lloyd was a great favourite of mine. He won 2 New Zealand Cups.
Grabs the lead, and Cecilia Lloyd goes the line to win it.
And of course, what about Gina Dave Fahey's Cup winners? I mean, what have they won? 8 cups, I think it is.
Just
outstanding. Yeah, outstanding.
And Little Mother, of course,
Oh,
came
Little
here and
Mother.
won a New Zealand Cup as well.
I should have mentioned her. She was very good, wasn't she? Little Mother too, and she won the Oaks here, didn't she, at Addington, if I remember rightly? Did she line up in a New Zealand Cup? I don't think she did.
Yeah, I think she got a New Zealand Cup as well, Trevor.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess the great thing about calling it Addington here with races like the New Zealand Cup and other significant races like the Oaks is that, you know, most of the time you would have got to call the best dogs from around the country would have come here to contest the big races.
Oh, that's right. You know, there's no doubt about it. The Cup meeting, you know, the Cup meeting is really the big night, isn't it? You know, that's the night you look forward to. Always had butterflies, you know, even though I've been doing it for, 43 years, but I still had, you know, you're still at the back of your mind thinking that something's going to happen, but anyway, no, most of the time it turned out to be quite good. The racing, the Cup nights here at Addington, just outstanding fields, aren't they?
How would you describe your commentary position here at Addington?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with the commentary position here. Bang on, you're right on the line. You know, any mistakes, you know, there's no excuses really. I'm a bugger for sort of trying to dive in, you know, to try and get a winner in a close finish, whereas I should just say it could go either way, but, you know, I always love having a go.
It was kind of weird in the early stages because, you know, we had on-course only, and then the TAB racing didn't even start to 82. And for a while there, Peter Early used to call all of the New Zealand Greyhound meetings in the country because there weren't actually that many TAB meetings, so he would go around the country for Radio Pacific. So there would actually be two of you on track calling races.
That's right, yeah. You know, I started in '79, as you know, and it wasn't until about 92, I think, you know, that I started with Radio Pacific. So I was on-course caller at Kiwi Turf for all that time, and Peter Early used to come down, and then in '92 things had changed a bit. Peter asked me if I wanted to do Addington, and then shortly after that I started calling Hutt Park and Forbury Park, and I think you might have done Invercargill, Rosso, if I remember.
I did back for a wee while, yeah. It was only sort of one a month.
Because it was one track I didn't get to
right.
for some reason, and I think because you used to do that, and Forbury Park, Hutt Park and Addington were my three tracks just for a wee while until Brian Martin come along, and then Peter suggested, well, you know, save you the travelling, let's give Brian a bit of a go, and I thought, yeah, why not? So Brian Martin took over. Probably that would have been about the mid-90s, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, and obviously we were getting more and more meetings as well, so, you know, you're probably busier at home.
Well, I was in those days, you know, doing the, you know, because I think we might have had 2 meetings at Addington at that stage, and of course I had a trial meeting as well. So, yeah, things started to, meetings started to increase here at Addington, and now of course we've got 4.
So we're talking about a period of time here from 1979 to now, 2022. How would you describe greyhound racing in 2022?
2022, greyhound racing is good. You know, look, I've always wanted to say it, I may as well say it now because I'm finishing. There's just a couple of improvements that I'd like to see the greyhounds, you know, to help them go forward. The obvious one is to get a straight track. They've got to get a straight track. I know it's difficult, but they've got to do that. And I still think 6-dog fields is better than 8-dog fields, especially in the lower grades. You know, we're doing a good thing now with the preferential box draws.
Yep.
I like that. I think 6-dog fields might be a help, you know, to keep the injuries down. And I think we've got to really concentrate on getting a straight track somewhere. And I think that's the only way I can see greyhound racing going ahead, Rosso.
Trevor, what will you miss most about this job as you come into the final weeks of your commentaries? What will be the biggest thing you kind of miss about this?
Oh, look, I'll miss the people for a start, and I'll just generally miss calling, I guess. You know, I've been doing it for 43 years. I mean, you know, I will miss it, there's no doubt about that, but it's come to a time now, the health's not as good as it was, and, you know, I've got to make a stand somewhere. I've decided to retire. I've turned 65 already, so I think now's the time, and hopefully I'll come right, and if I come right, I'll be certainly coming back to the track a few times anyway to catch up on a few friends anyway.
Let's assume that the health goes in the right direction from here, Trevor. What sort of plans do you have for your retirement if things are going well?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I haven't really been a golfer. They reckon bowls might be a good thing to do. I've got to do something. I can't, you know, the last thing I want to do is to be a couch potato. I just want to go out there and do something. Might have to go and buy a dog or something, or, you know, but no, listen, I'll do something, Rosso, that's for sure.
I know in the past, you know, you've had some, you know, racing trips, and you've gone to some of the feature meetings around the country and across in Australia and stuff as well. Is that something you'd like to do more of? Are there races or places that you want to see racing in that are sort of on your bucket list?
Yeah, the only thing that's on the bucket list now is Vegas.
Okay.
I was booked all ready to go a couple of years ago, and of course COVID put a stop to that, and that's a bit of a shame. I really wanted, all my life I wanted to go to Vegas, and I thought I was away, but listen, if I come right, I'll be heading to Vegas, that's for sure. And I think some of the big race meetings are a Japan Cup. I'd love to see a Japan Cup, I think. I've seen all the big races in Australia, Melbourne Cup, Cox Plate, Sydney Cup. I've been to all of them, but I'll keep going back to Melbourne. I love Melbourne, but I'll keep going back to Melbourne. But yeah, the Japan Cup will probably be on the bucket list as well.
And of course, closer to home, you've been a regular at the West Coast Harness meetings, particularly at Westport, where you've been, you know, worked for the club there for years.
They're a great club. The Westport Club are a great club. I just hope, cross fingers, that I can keep going back there. At the moment, I'm on a walking frame, but look, my new neurologist was pretty confident that we can get things right here. So fingers crossed, and you know, I won't know till the end of September, but hopefully I can keep going back to the coast. I love going over there.
There's something about that style of racing, isn't it? That's very, very grassroots stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's racing, and the people too. The people are great on the coast. They're lovely people, and you know, I've been doing it for 20 years. I've been their on-course commentator for 20 years. I just want to keep going back if I can, and yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Let's talk about some advice from you for budding commentators in the modern era. What would you say, as somebody who's done it for over 40 years, what would be your advice to a budding young commentator now?
Just don't give up. Just don't give up. It's hard getting a break, I know. You know, we've got some good budding up-and-comers now around the track. Look, just keep trying, because if it's what you want to do, there's no better job. You know, you're doing a job that you love and you're getting paid for. So, you know, just keep at it. You know, the break will come.
Well, Trevor, we appreciate all the time that you've given us, all of the commentaries and everything. It's been outstanding. And I'd like to thank you too, from me, for you know, welcoming me into your commentary box and giving me opportunities when you're away. So thank you for that. Thank you for the legacy that you've left in greyhound racing here in Christchurch and around the country.
Oh, thanks, Rosso. And the pleasure's been all mine. Thank you very much.
But the crowd wasn't too bad today, and a good off-course turnover, and we'll catch you next time trackside.